This is Chris Albert, and I'm here to remind you of one thing. Someday, you're going to die. Now, that's not some morbid statement or scary idea. It's a solid fact. Your time here on this earth is limited. And you need to be reminded of this as much as possible for one simple reason. To live your best life while you can. This is the Warrior Soul Podcast.
What's going on, ladies and gents? Welcome to the Warrior Soul Podcast. This is going to be a really great episode. I've got my friend Paul Tokgozoglu. Forgive me if I'm mispronouncing his last name, but really awesome guy. He's putting amazing content out there all the time. Paul is an internet marketing specialist. Now, what he does is he talks about spirituality, talks a lot about artificial intelligence, but also talks about how you can apply these to your own success in your own business. Paul's also got a really interesting story. He's a U.S. Army officer, and while he was in the Army, this is a really interesting thing, he found out that he was autistic. He's on the autistic spectrum. And he never knew this, and it was causing some crazy limitations in his life. And he ended up taking a test because he was going through some stuff and literally found he was on the spectrum, got himself some help, and it completely turned his life around. Like I said, it's going to be a really great conversation, and I think you guys will get a lot out of this. You should also check out his podcast. It's called the Beyond Homo Sapien Podcast. Really great stuff. I think he's publishing an episode every single day, so there's tons to choose from there. Before we get into the conversation, I just want to say that this podcast is brought to you by the good people at F-Bomb Nutrition. They make awesome, delicious packets of fat. They're portable packets of macadamia nut butters. They mix them up with chocolate. They mix them up with sea salt. Mix them up with pecan butter. They're absolutely delicious. And if you want to get yours, you can head over to www.dropinfbomb.com and use the code WarriorSoul at checkout and get 20% off your first order. With that, let's get into this conversation with Paul Tokgozoglu and the Warrior Soul Podcast. What is going on, everybody? Paul, welcome to the Warrior Soul Podcast, and I am going to pronounce your last name correctly, Tokgozoglu.
You nailed it.
Paul Tokgozoglu.
Crushed it. You crushed it.
Dude, welcome. We're going to talk about a lot of things today, but I want to get started by talking about exactly who you are. So who are you, Paul?
First of all, thanks for having me, brother. I really appreciate it. It's great to be here. It's always good to talk to you. So I got started podcasting about 2 years ago. I'm finishing up my time in the military. I'm still in the active duty Army in the United States military. I'll be out in just a couple of months. And about 2 years ago, I got started on the whole entrepreneur thing because I realized very quickly, as soon as I kind of got into the military and started to experience this 9-to-5 life. I'm in the 90% of the military that is basically indistinguishable from a 9-to-5 job, but I wear a uniform and combat boots. And other than that, it's relatively the same as a corporate American job. And I realized very quickly when I got started, I was like, man, I do not want to do this for the rest of my life. I want to be an entrepreneur. I was getting really into Tim Ferriss and Joe Rogan and lots of folks along those lines who were teaching about business or having entrepreneurs on their podcasts and stuff like that. And I was like, holy shit, man, I can do this. I can make something happen here. And that's really where I wanted to go. So about 2 years ago, I started podcasting. And I started the Matrix Jiu Jitsu podcast because I absolutely love Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. It's one of my favorite things in the world. And that kind of led me to learning more about digital marketing. And I started to realize that I had this set of skills that I was developing around the podcast, like learning how to do Facebook ads, learning how to do social media marketing, YouTube channels, and all this other stuff that I was getting into. And I made a ton of mistakes on my own stuff. I was doing everything wrong, but I was learning, and it was great. And then people started to reach out to me and ask me to run their social media platforms. And that's when things clicked for me, man. And I said, oh shit, I could make money doing this stuff. This is great. And then along the way, I started getting into artificial intelligence. I started to get in much more to spirituality and kind of my own spiritual and personal development as I was going through quite a lot of challenges kind of in my personal life. And that resulted in me wanting to do a different podcast. And that's what I do these days, is a show called Beyond Homo Sapien, about kind of the evolution of the human species and how people can kind of understand what's happening in the world these days, whether it's artificial intelligence or virtual reality, or kind of the more esoteric stuff along the lines of the law of attraction, or learning about psychic abilities and psychedelic drugs, and just kind of all these things that are kind of emerging out of the collective mind of the internet these days. And but on the side, I'm still doing some digital marketing for people, and I really enjoy that too. So life's good, man. That's me these days.
Interesting stuff, man. So you went into the military. Were you 18 when you went in, or were you older?
No, I was 22 when I graduated. I did ROTC in college. I studied philosophy at university. So obviously, there's nothing I could do other than join the military. but I did ROTC, and that was great. Actually, I absolutely
loved it. Did you get a commission off of that?
Yeah, I did. So I joined as a military police officer when I was 22, and here I am about 5 years later, ready to get out. But it was I haven't done much actual military policing, I'll tell you that. I've done quite a lot of PowerPoint presentations. But that all being said, I'm incredibly grateful for my time in the military. It's been such a great experience. I got to live in Germany for 3 years. They sent me over there, which was outstanding. And so life has been great the past couple of years, man. But it certainly has been a journey to get to kind of where I am today.
So when you first started your Jiu Jitsu podcast, what types of things did you have to go through in order to get that off the ground? How many episodes did you do? What were the first episodes like?
Oh, man. Well, first of all, I didn't even fucking know that it was going to be a Jiu Jitsu podcast in the beginning. All that I knew, man, was I had to start something, because I was having I was going through some mental health issues in my life, and I was feeling really depressed a lot of the time because I felt like I didn't really have any purpose. I didn't really have this. I knew that I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I knew that this is like what I wanted to do as soon as I got out of the military, and I didn't want to have to get another job. And I was feeling depressed because I wasn't doing anything yet. So I just knew, man, it's like I have to do something. And I had no skills. I had nothing. I was in the military and I studied philosophy in college. I had no knowledge of entrepreneurship really at all, but I had to do something. So I started a podcast because I thought, well, I can talk and I've got some ideas. And I just literally started talking. Like, I was just like, the early episodes were such shit. They were absolute garbage. I challenge people to find them because I believe that they may have gotten taken off the internet a while ago. But they were on my phone. The very first episode, I recorded it on my phone as I was driving on a road trip. And that I had it. I was like, man, I'm going to record the shittiest podcast in the world and I'm going to put it on the internet because I start today. And it was about travel, I think, because I was living in Europe and I had all these thoughts about how Europe was different than the United States and so on. So I was like, I'll do it about that. And then I started to interview guests, and all of my friends were jiu-jitsu people because that's all the friends I had in the world for the most part were people doing jiu-jitsu. So we started talking about that. And then it clicked for me like, oh, duh, you love jiu-jitsu. Let's do that. Let's do a show about Brazilian jiu-jitsu. So it took a little while for the show to kind of pick up some traction. But eventually I got to interview some pretty big names like Clark Gracie or Dean Lister was one who came a couple of times on the show. And it was great. And I learned so much over the course of about a year of doing that show. And then I kind of switched and I realized that I had more to talk about than just jiu-jitsu. And there's much more that I was interested in than just talking about passing the guard all day and setting up leg locks. Although I could certainly talk about that for quite a long time.
Yeah. I mean, if you, and if anybody wants to hear anybody who sounds foolish, you could go back to the first episodes of the Warrior Soul podcast. Cause and even recent episodes I've done that I couldn't stand listening to myself. But I think it's this thing that if you have something inside of you that you want to get out, you got to find an outlet to put it out there. And I think podcasting is a great platform to be able to do that. It's not, I don't know if it's necessarily the best step in starting a business, but it's definitely a good way of starting to refine your communication skills, to really help you to get rid of mental and verbal tics, but also to help you and learn a little bit about promoting.
Oh yeah, exactly. And that's what I learned. And that's what I learned. That's what I tell people these days whenever they ask me about starting a business or getting started as an entrepreneur. It's like, literally, you can start anything. You can start a blog, a YouTube channel, a podcast, just do a live video on Facebook every single day. And you will learn. You will develop a set of skills, because let's say you do podcasting. Let's say you start with that. You're really going to be learning not just podcasting, because honestly, you're right. The podcast itself is usually not going to make you enough money to live your life until you are at that like Joe Rogan, Tim Ferriss level. Then you're solid. But for the majority of us, it's really about developing those skills. It's about learning, okay, so in order to get people to listen to the show, probably going to have to learn how to market on social media a little bit. You're going to have to learn how Facebook works. How does Instagram work? How does Twitter work? How do these different outlets actually function? What types of rules do they play by? And then furthermore, you'll have to learn, maybe you decide to promote it on Reddit. You're posting it around on Reddit or some of these other internet forums. You're going to have to learn how to do that. You're going to have to learn perhaps maybe you build a blog or a website around the show. So now you're learning website design. You're learning blogging, which leads you to search engine optimization. You know, how do you get ranked on Google? How do you get ranked on iTunes? Is that even a thing that works? How does the iTunes algorithm work? You're learning audio recording. You're learning sound editing. You know, there's all of these skills that are going into it. There's all of these things that kind of go around this idea of podcasting. You know, maybe you start building an email list for an email newsletter or some sort of a free offer that you promote on the show. You know, you can, now you're learning email marketing. You're learning how to set up an email campaign. These are all skills. And this is what people don't realize. These are all skills that you can charge thousands and thousands of dollars every single month, that you get paid a monthly retainer by business owners to keep you around, keep you running their Facebook ads, managing their social media, doing their email campaigns. These are all really valuable skills, assuming that you're good, assuming that you actually know what you're doing and you can get them results and they can get a return on their investment. These are very marketable and very important skills in today's world. And that's really what people miss. It's like, it's not the podcast or the blog or the YouTube channel that's going to make you tons of money like in the next, couple of months. But the skills that you learn by doing it, those can really make you money if you learn how to market yourself.
Yeah, man, you can apply those anywhere. I've been looking at the Beyond Homo Sapien podcast, and it looks like you started recording every single day. How is that going for you? And why did you decide to do that?
Oh, it's been great. It's been an adventure. And I joined a mastermind with a guy named Miles Beckler. I don't know if you've heard of him before, but he's pretty well known in the kind of digital marketing world. He runs his wife and him run a business called Ask Angels, which is one of the top kind of niche websites in the spirituality world. They help people with like guided meditations and kind of unlocking their spiritual gifts and things like that. And and it's a multi-million-dollar website, and Miles and his wife run that. His wife is kind of the face of that organization, but Miles is the one who kind of is in the background running the Facebook ads, doing all the keyword research and stuff like that. And he started a mastermind a little while ago, and I joined. And one of the first things that you do in this is you do what he calls the 90-day challenge, 90-day content challenge, where you just post an episode of whatever it is you're doing every single day, whether it's YouTube, a podcast, a blog, whatever is your thing, you do it every single day. And his theory around this, which I've found to be absolutely true, is not only does it, ideally get you more followers because you are, doing it every day, you're putting out a lot of content, but it gets you into that mode of thinking of saying, I am a content creator. I am someone who creates value in the world. I am not the one who is consuming content. I'm producing more than I am consuming. And it's a mindset shift where you're making it a habit, where you're like, okay, I am someone who does a podcast every single day. I'm a podcast host. That's what I do. And I found it to be, it's been amazing. First of all, obviously the show's done really well, and it is continuing to do really well. And I still got about a month left of this challenge. So I'm excited to see where it goes. But it's absolutely right. I've become so much more comfortable as a host and as a content creator. It's been good, but that's the reason.
How do you come up with topics every single day? Like, do you have a special process or anything like that? Because, I do this show 3 times a week right now, and we have got different types of episodes that we do. One of the things that I found is that, I'm at times I'm at no shortage of topics to discuss, but then at other times I'm sitting here and I'm like, all right, what am I going to talk about tomorrow? Maybe those blades of grass out there are good subject matter, things like that. Yeah. So where do you come up with your own topics?
First of all, I'm fortunate enough that I kind of selected a topic for the show that's pretty broad in nature and covers a wide variety of interests. So the show covers everything from virtual reality and artificial intelligence to talking about Jesus Christ and his teachings and how they influence us today, or how to overcome limiting beliefs, or talking about what is spiritual awakening even mean? That's something that gets searched on Google pretty often, is stuff like, what's a spiritual awakening? And, so I figured maybe people are obviously interested in that type of stuff. And that kind of is part of the secret too, is I have a keyword research tool, keywordfinder.com, for anyone who's interested, where you can see what people are searching on Google. You can see what they're looking for. And this is really important. And again, something that Miles Beckler is very, very big on. He's my sensei these days with all things digital marketing. And you can just search and see what people are looking for in your niche. You can look up the exact terms they're looking for. So, for example, if I want to talk about the law of attraction, which is something we get into pretty often on the show, because I think that's really important as our species kind of moves forward, is understanding this kind of the power of our own minds in general is kind of a very important topic. So if you look up, law of attraction as the keyword, you'll get all these phrases people search, like how to attract love, how to manifest money. Like, these are literal things that people are searching thousands and thousands of times every single month. Or symptoms of a spiritual awakening is another one. So I say, okay, great, there's my show. I can do a show on that. So if I'm doing a solo episode, I usually do that, is I kind of consult the keyword research tool, and you can come up with a whole series. You can see, okay, there's 250,000 people a month are searching for law of attraction. So I can say, okay, if I can get onto Google, on the front page of Google for law of attraction, that'll be a ton of traffic for my show and my blog and everything like that. It might take a while, but over the course of a year, I can produce a shitload of content and maybe make it. And if not, I just know, like, okay, something people are interested in, obviously. So I can do a whole series, and that's what I do. Like, lately, whenever it's a solo episode, whenever I don't have a guest that day, I just say, okay, let's talk about the law of attraction. Let's put out some more content about that. because it's something I know quite a lot about. I've researched quite a lot and experienced in my own life. So boom, there you go. There's a show. But honestly, usually these days I have a guest and then we dive into some great topic, like with you. You came on the show pretty recently. Yeah. So I do that. I work with some PR companies that give me some guests, and I just met a lot of people the past couple years. So I'm always reaching out to guests. Like today we had Evan Carmichael on the show. That was fantastic. So yeah, it's been fun. It's been great.
I got to ask you this because, a lot of the content you speak about is spiritual in nature and the law of attraction and things like that. You're sitting next to a poster that says, "Thou shalt not commit logical fallacies." And you seem like a really, really logical guy. Is logic and spirituality mutually exclusive? Are they mutually exclusive, or are they able to have tenuous synapses between each other, and are they able to coincide?
Actually, I believe that the only kind of spiritual practices that you can count as somewhat true are the ones that logically make sense. And I'm always looking for ways to kind of logically back up my own beliefs, my own kind of, beliefs about the world. That's a very important world. What I believe to be true, I have to logically be able to explain it, be able to prove it in a sense. I might not be able to prove it in accordance with the scientific method just yet, but I can do something close. Like, for example, and this is what I really talk about a lot on the show, is you have to go off of your own experience. I grew up in organized religion. I was involved with fundamental Christian church till I was like 17 years old. And then I left because I started reading the Bible and I realized that what Jesus was saying was actually completely different than what the church was talking about. Mm-hmm. And that's something I get into pretty often on the show. But I love Jesus. I think he had plenty of amazing shit to say, just like Buddha and all these guys in general, they have great things to say. But you get what I'm saying. So like, you have to go off your own experience. And in organized religion, that's the opposite. They're saying, hey, listen to me. I have the answers. This pastor or the priest or whoever, I have the answers. And you need to show up at church. You need to do X, Y, and Z, and just have faith. Just believe that it's all going to work out and it's going to be fine. We know, blah, blah, blah. And that's so foreign to what my experience has been. And that's why I believe in the law of attraction, because I've experienced it. I've had direct experience with it working in my life and in the lives of many people that I know. Like, in other words, I could point to and list out examples for hours of it working in my life where I directly observed, again, from my opinion, I believe that this is a correlation, but it's happened to me so many times where I just feel like, okay, there's something going on here. This is not a coincidence. There's some real shit happening. And then I can say, okay, now let's think logically and scientifically. Like, I can see that the law of attraction works, for example. I can observe that it appears to be true. And I can kind of know how it works because there's all these kind of formulas you can come up with for like how to manifest and create things in your world and stuff like that. So I can say, okay, I kind of know how it works, but why? Why is it working? Why does it work? And now here's where we kind of bridge the gap between spirituality and kind of the emerging technology. We can say, okay, maybe the reason it works is because we live in a simulation. Maybe that's what's going on here is you and I we're in a video game together effectively. There's some crazy shit going on that we can't comprehend with our little monkey brains, and we're starting to see virtual reality expanding now. And we're saying, okay, maybe that's what's going on here. That's why it works, because it's the rules of the video game effectively. Yeah.
I've had on, Tom Campbell. Have you heard of Tom Campbell before?
Yeah, I listened to that episode you did with him. It was
I've had him on a couple of times, and I think he's actually in the process of trying to do experiments to try to demonstrate that. I'm not sure how they're going. I haven't gotten any updates from them or anything like that. But I got to go out to one of his seminars in New York City about a year and a half ago, and it was an interesting seminar. Just watching the different things. He was explaining remote viewing. He was explaining healing people, psychic healing, things like that. And that's a guy with a physics degree who worked for NASA and a whole host of other scientific organizations. So, yeah, I mean, all of that stuff is really interesting to me. Can you explain the law of attraction for us a little bit?
So there's so many misconceptions about it. That's the other thing I found. And what I really try to dispel on my show is there's all this sayings about like, oh, just think about something and it's gonna come. It's gonna come to you. That's what the law of attraction is. That's not it. It's not just the thoughts are the first step. And actually, if you get into where it's important whenever you're researching anything to look, where does this actually come from? Because if you study, where does the law of attraction really come from? What do you think? You think of The Secret, right?
Right.
Most of the time, The Secret is kind of what brought it in. No, the law of attraction dates back to antiquity, to ancient Egypt, and in occult philosophy is where it comes from. It's magic. It's literal magic. Like that's when people are talking about magic with a K or however you want to spell it. They're talking about stuff like the law of attraction, which is basically the power of your mind to influence the world around you. And that if you are someone who hypothetically is well versed in something like the law of attraction, what you're effectively doing is you're co-creating your reality with some sort of a divine force that we can't really understand. You're making a demand about your reality and you are creating that thing as if by magic. So that's where it comes from. And if you dive into and kind of do a little research around what those teachings actually say, you learn there's a formula. There's all sorts of formulas for how this actually works. It's not just thinking. Thinking is the first step. Thinking is what gets you going. And then people give up. They give up at the first step. They say, okay, I thought about myself on a yacht. I visualized it. I made a vision board and it never happened. So it's bullshit. Like, no, that is not how it works. It's the thinking is the first step. And then your thoughts influence your beliefs and you start to change how you believe about the world. And then your beliefs make you feel differently. So, for example, if I believe that the world is a dangerous place and that I'm a shitbag and like nothing's ever going to go right for me, I'm going to feel like shit, right? And then that feeling is going to make me want to just drink a beer and sit on my couch all day. It's not going to make me want to do anything, right? It's going to make me feel kind of depressed. So the way that you feel is incredibly important. And your feelings come from your beliefs about yourself and about the world. And then all of that together is what gets you to take action. And then it's that taking action that really drives the point home. And this is kind of where it kind of, in my opinion, steps into something that's a little more spiritual. Because again, from my experience, what I've observed about my own life is that when I take action from a place of feeling really good and believing the right things, and I've got powerful thoughts going in my head about, oh, this shit's going to work, and I have such a strong belief, like this is what I'm supposed to be doing, it's possible, it's going to work out, and I feel fantastic, and I'm like happy and joyful, and then I take action, that's when things line up for me in a way that is magical, in a way where it's like, holy shit, how did this person reach out to me at that time and suddenly things go right, if that makes sense. Like for example, like I feel like I need to give an example here of what I'm talking about, because it's easy for someone to be listening to me and think like, oh, well, you're just working hard. You just, you're just doing the right shit. And it's like, yes, but it's like you put one foot in front of the other, and then the God or the universe or whatever you want to call it takes 10 steps towards you. And it's like, oh, he's ready. Oh, he's doing it. Let's feed him the right people. Let's give him the right ideas. Like, for example, one of the projects I'm involved with is a project to use artificial intelligence to kind of revolutionize education. And as soon as I kind of started to believe that this was possible, and I was all by myself, as soon as I started to believe this was possible and I started to learn more about it, learn how to actually code artificial intelligence and what that all actually involves and how we might actually be able to do this, suddenly I met, within a week, everyone that I needed to make this happen. And not just that, but they all had the same idea that I did. As soon as I told them my idea, they were like, oh yeah, I had that idea too. Last week, I had the same idea. What a coincidence that we would meet in this random Facebook group and start messaging each other out of the blue. And we had the same fucking idea. And then you examine further, it's like, okay, actually, they all have birthdays within 2 weeks of mine, for example. And I think like, okay, I'm born on October 9th, 1991. One of my team members is born October 3rd, 1991. Another one is born last week of September.
I think I was shaving by 1991.
It's true, but you get what I'm saying. And this is and that's just one example off the top of my head. I have many, but that's.
No, I get what you're saying. I mean, part of that's the kind of like if you look at the world as happening to you versus the world happening for you. I think that's an important mental distinction to make there for a lot of people. I also think that in some ways, until something like this happens for you, it's really hard to swallow. Like it's really, really difficult to swallow. And that's why I have, we're both part of the London Real community and we've been on different forums for them and things like that. A lot of times, being on a community like that, I almost feel like some people who are into this stuff are shoving it down people's throats. And for people who aren't ready for it yet. And I think that's a mistake for people to make, because if somebody's not ready to hear this, it's not going to change them. It's not going to help them. It's not going to serve them. It's just going to piss them off. Right.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And there's a saying amongst these teachings that the teacher appears when the student is ready.
Right.
And that the right teacher, again, as if by magic, will appear when the student is ready. And and that's something I believe in for sure, is that if I have this complete faith that what I'm saying is true, again, based off my experience, always try to lead with that, because I find so many fucking people out there these days who will tell you X, Y, and Z, and they'll just say, "Just believe me. I know. I just trust me." And it's like, no, guys, that's what religion does. That's what organized theology has done, and it doesn't work. You got to have your own experiences. So again, trust your own experience over me or anything. But regardless, if I do believe in this, then I should believe that if I'm saying the truth, if I'm speaking real truth if I'm correct, then the right people will be listening to this podcast, that the right folks will have gravitated into my orbit. And that if there are any kind of haters out there, people who aren't ready, or if this is over their head or something like that, then it's okay. They weren't ready to receive it. The right people who are ready to receive this information, they will hear it. And not only that, they might look into some of the stuff. That's the other thing, man, that I've seen and experienced for myself. So when you're ready, you'll go looking for it. You'll go looking for the answer. And that's when things start to really click for you. You might hear something like the people who are ready, they will go and they'll get on Google and they'll start looking into all this stuff that you and I are talking about. They'll start coming to their own conclusions. They'll look up the name of the guy that you said earlier, and they'll become curious. And then that's one path up the mountain of all of this stuff. It's one path up the vortex of whatever you want to say. That's what happened to me. I started getting into like just kind of general mindset stuff. Mm-hmm. And one thing leads to the next. You look up like, okay, that person who wrote this book, who's the person that influenced them? I want to read that person's book. And then you read that book and it's slightly more hippie, slightly more woo-woo. And then you're like, okay, how about the person who influenced this person? You read that book or you listen to that podcast and you're like, oh shit, these people are all practicing magic. And it goes all the way back to ancient Egypt and ancient Greece and so on. And then you learn about all of the people throughout history who have believed in this stuff, such as Alexander the Great and Plato and Pythagoras, who spent 20 years in the Egyptian mystery schools before he created mathematics.
I think Patton did too, right?
The more you go down the rabbit hole, the more you see how many people have studied these things from a very scientific point of view.
So that's interesting. So in working with this, right? How does somebody apply it, right? So we have this idea of the law of attraction, going out there, adopting beliefs, changing your thoughts first and then taking action. When you say take action, right? Everybody says take action. Like, you listen to Grant Cardone, take action, 10X, man. Go ahead and 10X everything right now. You know what I mean? Like, what does that mean? Like, what action should you be taking?
Sometimes the action is just to, like I said, just get on Google and look up the people that, you know that you're curious about, like stuff like that. That can be an action, and like for me, going back to that example I gave earlier of learning about, starting this company about artificial intelligence and then meeting all my teammates as if by magic. The action that I took was I bought a course on Udemy on coding, artificial intelligence, and I did video 1. And that was it. And then suddenly this magic, literally that same day, I met like 2 of the people that I'm still working with a year later. And, maybe that was it. Maybe that was the action. But I think that's why it's so important to have everything else in line. Because if you're just obsessed with taking action, you're going to fall for some fake guru who gets you on the YouTube ad, who gets you hooked on this new drop shipping method or this new fucking, I don't know, diet plan or something that doesn't even work. Some person who doesn't know what they're talking about, and it's not at all like aligned with what it is that you actually are meant to do here on this planet. And you're just going to go wasting your time, and you're going to feel discouraged, and it might not work out. And because you're spinning your wheels, there's a difference between taking like determined, planned action that you feel is so correct, and you've like gone into the depths of your creativity and pulled this thing out of you, and you're like, holy shit, this is what I meant to do in the world. And then you take action. That's different than just spinning your wheels, following all these fake gurus on Facebook or YouTube, signing up for their courses or whatever, and it doesn't feel right, but you're going with it anyway because you need money and you're feeling broke and you're feeling desperate. You're like, man, this guy says this thing will work. I don't know, it doesn't feel right, but I'm just going to go with it. Like that's different kind of action. That's why it's so important to have kind of everything. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does, because, it's kind of like you were talking about earlier with the everyday content thing, right? So I'm somebody, there's periods in my life where I did videos on YouTube 90 straight days, like straight on and on and on. But at the same time, like, I think that, and I did a Facebook Live about this morning. If you don't have clarity of where you're going though, then a lot of times that can get you into a position of where you're going to end up spinning your wheels. So I think that in some aspect, what you're talking about, you had a little bit of clarity in what you wanted to do. You became interested in something. You became interested in artificial intelligence, and then you wanted to know more about that. So you had a little bit more clarity about what you were doing there. But I think in some cases, people don't have any clarity of vision, and because they don't have any clarity of vision, they hide. They hide behind the content creation. They hide behind the blog making. They hide, or maybe they don't do that at all, and they hide behind something else. But I think in a lot of cases, people end up hiding from the real action that they'd want to take, and they end up making themselves busy with other types of things, right?
Totally agree. Absolutely. It's essential that you have that clarity around what you want. And now that doesn't mean that you wait for perfection. Doesn't mean that you wait for the perfect idea. Like when I first started doing the podcast, I thought it was going to be all about artificial intelligence. It was going to be like a emerging technology podcast. And then very quickly, I shouldn't say quickly, over the course of about maybe a month or 2, I started to realize like, no, I really do want to talk about spirituality. And not only that, but kind of like I mentioned with the simulation theory example, I feel like they're linked. I feel like one feeds into the other. And then I realized, oh shit, that's my unique message, is that they're linked, is that technology and spirituality is evolving together. And then I kind of hit on that. I was like, okay, boom, that's the show, is this kind of merging of those two together. And, but I would never have fucking hit on that if I didn't just get started. If I didn't, start hitting record and publishing it on iTunes and doing research, myself, trying to develop my own thinking around the show. And I know going back, that would have never happened if I'd never gotten started recording that shitty podcast on my phone 2 years ago. Cause I would be, I would not be the person I am today, and so on. And, so it is important to take action, but I think you're absolutely right, man. It's important to take introspective action. Like sometimes the action that you need is to go for a walk or meditate more, or go see an energy healer, or get some therapy or something like that. Or, you know what I mean? Like oftentimes that's the action that needs to be taken, is like the great idea, the thing that you're meant to do, the stroke of brilliance. From my experience, it's never going to come. It doesn't come when you're 8 hours into your blog post and you're fucking stressed and you're cramming all of this SEO keywords into it. It doesn't come when you're doing that. It comes when you're like on a walk in nature and the stress is gone and you're like, the world is so beautiful. Wow. And then boom, then you get the idea comes to you then. It comes to you when you're daydreaming. It comes to you when you're letting your mind wander a little bit. That's when you kind of connect the dots, and you get what I'm saying?
No, absolutely. I do get what you're saying. I mean, that's a big reason why I run a lot. I go out and I run, and I get a lot of really great thoughts while I'm running. And that's another reason why I like to keep exercise into my routine several times a day, not just once a day, because it just helps to create so much creativity. It helps to create so many friendly chemicals that aid in thought processes. You had mentioned you'd gone through some of your own great difficulties, and some of your own spiritual difficulties, some of your own mental difficulties. How has spirituality helped you to get through those?
So when I first joined the military, and this is kind of why I realized I couldn't ever really have a 9-to-5 job like this, is I started to have a lot of mental health issues regarding anxiety. I was having panic attacks almost every single day it's like 3 years ago now, maybe a little less, maybe like 2.5 years ago. I was having panic attacks like almost every single day. And I didn't know why. I couldn't understand. I hated going to work. I couldn't understand. It was so loud to me. I was having these massive like sensory overload issues, and I couldn't understand like why my coworkers were all fine. But for me, like, it was impossible to work in this office environment of like phones going off and people talking and the computer's buzzing and all this other, and the air is just so stale and drives you crazy. And I realized about 2 years ago that I'm on the autism spectrum, that I'm high functioning autism, as they might call it. Although personally, I think that the whole high functioning versus low functioning thing is kind of bullshit, because I've had some pretty low functioning moments of my life for sure. But so it kind of fluctuates. These days I'm pretty high functioning, I guess you could say. But so I realized I started learning all about that. I was learning